Let me give you the 4 negative responses. He warned us. Because if we don't know the biblical narrative, here's the key, we will by default as believers take the secular narrative. If we don't know the biblical narrative, we'll take the secular one. We'll take what all of they're saying on the internet and everywhere. This is what's happening. And it will look really gloomy if you're not rooted in biblical revelation. Number 1, fear. Jesus said in Luke 21, wow. We all know the verse, men will faint for fear. Many believers will faint for fear because they won't make sense of it. They'll go, where's this thing going? And Jesus will say, you don't have to if you know that I'm leading it and I gave you the details ahead of time. Look at this. The number 2 negative.
Just pause on that for a sec. Right now, we have an epidemic, a pandemic of fear. When he says that, I mean, have you ever seen fear like this in the earth?
Yeah, and especially amongst the younger generation. The people that don't know the Bible, and then they're the most afraid because they feel like things are going to get worse and worse. The economy is going to get worse. The world is getting worse. The environment's getting worse. So this is so unique, the way you've connected the bridegroom, the king, and the judge together. It's one reality, one God leading us through all these things. And
no contradiction in his personality
exactly.
at all.
And at the end, we have to pray about this fear, because fear right now is crippling the church. You know, the church. This is the year of the mouth. This is the year of the mouth. 2020. Chuck Pierce stood in. He says it's the year of the mouth. And interesting that the enemy of our souls, the real literal, devil. He's brought about sickness and covered the mouth of the entire world. Amazing.
No, that's true. But the fear is going to intensify among people that are not aware of Jesus and his leadership. And you can grow up in the church and love Jesus and cry when you worship, but not be equipped to understand what's happening. And the second negative response is offense. That's in Matthew 24. And I got all the notes right there. And he said, many will be offended. Now we know where people will be offended one towards another, but I'll tell you something more serious. People are going to be believers offended at Jesus' leadership. They're going to say, my church didn't taught me this would not happen. My church taught me we would never see this. Are the teachers in the Bible, are the Bible teachers of my generation, are they liars? Is the Bible not true? Is God not a God of love? An offense at God for allowing the negative to increase is going to be a huge point of vulnerability for the church in this hour.
You know, Mike, they had this actually happen in China because they taught a rapture in the church in China, which is part of the cultural before the cultural purges. And then the cultural purges came, and it was so intense against the church in China that they had about 1 million people, but hundreds of thousands fell away till it was at a remnant. And then they read the rest of the Bible, like you're saying. And the core group that read the rest of the Bible actually got strengthened in the Lord. They got faith for the future and hope. And the church just exploded.
Millions were martyred.
Millions were martyred, but they became stronger when they realized the whole of Scripture. So that is a huge point. We've seen this offense happen.
If we don't have the biblical narrative, it's not like automatically we'll be offended, but we're so much more vulnerable to fear and offense. And I'm 65 years old, and the 20-somethings, I am impassioned about training them on the 150 chapter narrative of the Bible. So they go, okay, we saw these, I don't know the exact number, but the 10 big categories of negative, but we see the 10 categories of positive. That's just a hypothetical number. You can make the categories any kind of number you want to. Actually, there's so many details. And they go, oh, they're both happening, but the end of the story is glorious, and this is why it's happening. Oh my goodness. I wish they would have told me that before the darkness escalated. The third negative, F is fear, O is offense, L. Now this one I had to kind of reach to make the acronym work. I'm just saying it. It's L for lust. And in Luke 21, verse 34 and 35, Jesus said, be careful, because immorality and drunkenness, he gave a few others, will overtake your heart in that day if you're not watching your heart. And the reason there's going to be an explosion of immorality and drunkenness and 10 other things because people love sin, but forget that right now. That's not my point right now. People will be self-medicating in immorality, drunkenness, opioids, drugs to escape pain. And so
what? I couldn't hear you.
To escape pain. They will be self-medicating, meaning people love immorality for other reasons, but they'll be going, I got to get some escape. And Jesus actually warned them of finding that escape in the hour when all these things are happening. So I'm using the word lust, meaning people will be far more vulnerable to escape through momentary pleasure when fear and offense grabs their heart and everything around them seems different than they thought it was going to happen.
Wow.
Then the fourth negative, FOLD, is deception. Matthew 24 again. And again, I got all the verses on the notes. Jesus said, this is really alerting. He said, many, he used the word many twice in one verse. I think it's the only verse in the Bible where many is used twice about two different subjects in one verse. Maybe I'm wrong, but I think it's the only one. It's the only one I've ever seen. Jesus said, many, that's millions, many false prophets will deceive many. Now, when people think of false prophets, they sometimes think of some guy with horns on with shifty eyes, false prophet. And probably there'll be a few of those guys around undoubtedly, but that's not who I'm thinking about. False prophets are social commentators that are giving the secular narrative of what's the biblical one.
Wow.
Now, those social commentators, they're really cool. They're gifted. They're good looking. They got great social media platforms. And many of them are coming out of the churches. They're based in churches. They're giving a social commentary, a false one that does not agree with the biblical narrative and setting people up for wrong expectations, to be deceived and duped, to believe wrong things, to accept wrong things. The deception is terrifying because many of them, they're looking for just feeling good. So they'll take whatever narrative makes them feel good, almost like the lust and the drugs and all that stuff. So FOLD, Jesus gave those four negatives obviously for every generation. He was talking, he said one generation particularly will be more vulnerable. I'm adding these words than any other generation because they don't know how to navigate what's going on, navigate it. But I've already put it all in the book right there.